Hi folks, and welcome to Electronics and Design class. In this little welcome video, I'm going to show you some of the types of projects you're going to do this year with me in class and in the tutorials on the website. Then we're going to start off pretty simple with stuff like this. Right here we have just some LEDs and resistors that are protecting them, all soldered together on copper tape. And I'll go through with you how to calculate what types of resistors you need to protect your circuits. And you'll make some crafts projects where you're just lighting things up with LEDs. Right, so you can see these LEDs are lighting up. And imagine having like a picture in front of them or something like that you can light up from behind. Or any kind of crafts project that would look cool with some lights on it. Maybe some red or green or blue or white light. After we've really gotten some good skills with protecting circuits, we're going to move into microcontrollers. And this is a really powerful and versatile microcontroller called an Arduino board. It has a little microchip here that runs it, and we can upload our programs that we'll learn to write onto the board, and then it'll run on here. What I have set up right now is a photoresistor, which will input its electrical properties to the Arduino board, and I'm just going to alter its properties by putting it in my shadow. And you see over here the light's getting dimmer and brighter, and dimmer and brighter. Now these lights, they're just here to indicate to you that something is happening. It doesn't have to be lights, but we will use these lights several times throughout the year. These are addressable, meaning you can make any one of these individual lights turn on, and they're RGB, meaning you can make any color you want. Another sensor we'll use, besides this light sensor, is a flex sensor. And the principles are the same, except that instead of measuring how much light hits it, there we go, it's going to measure how much you bend it. And you can see it changing the lights right now based on whether it's bent or a little more straight. Some other sensors that we'll get to use are, let's see, this is called a potentiometer, and it has 3 prongs, and we'll think of it as a fancy dimmer switch. We'll get into it more later. This is like a potentiometer. It's just like these other things. It changes its electrical properties based on where you touch it along this. So instead of a dimmer switch that you turn, it could be just a dimmer switch that maybe you touch it right there, or you touch it right there. Something like that. And keep in mind that these lights are just indicators. There could be any device over here, anything from a single light to a garage door opener. It could open the blinds. It could do any number of things. Let's see, another sensor. This is a pressure sensor. I'll just set it down. It's kind of small. And this will be a little bit tricky, but the harder you press on this, it'll change its properties too, so that we'll be able to detect it and then do something with it based on its electrical properties. One other type of sensor, and this is actually pretty neat. One of the most advanced things we'll do will be using aluminum foil. You're going to be able to make a sensor that detects your proximity to aluminum foil using capacitive touch. So you can say touch or not, but you'll also be able to use proximity, which is really cool. And of course, foil can be used as a simple on-off switch. Some other things that we will use include, let's see, we'll use a variety of DC motors. So here's one. This is a motor from inside an old pager. Cell phone motors are a little bit smaller these days. Let's see if that'll come into focus. But you can see that it just has a lopsided weight on the tip, and when it spins, it vibrates. And so this is what will vibrate your You can probably hear it buzzing there. So this is what vibrates inside of your pager or your cell phone. Although cell phones do use smaller ones now. This is an accelerometer, and it can determine its orientation and whether or not it's upside down, right side up, or on its side. And it can also detect, since it's an accelerometer, its motion. So if you move it, it can detect its motion in different directions. And that can be really fun. One type of sensor that, it's not really a sensor because it's just so weird, but this is cloth where the thread has all been coated in silver. And so it conducts electricity. And you can do things like stretch it, and that changes its electrical properties. And you can measure that, and therefore you can control some other thing based on what you're doing with this conductive fabric. And to go along with that, we have this conductive thread, and it's basically a wire, but it's soft enough that you can sew it onto the conductive fabric. And then we'll have other things we can play with, like this. This is an Arduino board, but you can see that it's much smaller, and it has holes. Let's see if I can. It has holes so that you can sew this conductive thread onto it. And we also have other components. This is that same type of LED that's down here that can be any color you want, and it's addressable, but it has sewable pads here for you to connect this conductive thread to. Now, if you want to sound really cool and you have friends or relatives who work in electronics or engineering or physics, you can tell them that you're going to have to use capacitors to protect your circuits, and they'll think you sound really cool. And you'll learn all about how capacitors work and how they will relate to this particular circuit, and why I should have one in here, but I don't because I'm being lazy. And I actually just knew this one would work okay. And you'll use some little transistors like this one, and these are little things that have 3 prongs, and you'll learn all about how these work. And then you'll use one of these. And to a beginner, this looks really boring. It's just some little chip, it has 3 prongs, it has some piece of metal stuck to the back. Well, the piece of metal is a heat sink. And the heat sink is there so that you can use a lot of electricity without melting the thing, without catching your whole circuit on fire. And this is a fancy type of transistor. It's called a MOSFET. And we're going to use this to drive a more powerful circuit later in the year. Don't worry, I will make sure that you are safe. I'll make you calculate exactly how much power you're using so you don't burn the school down or anything like that. But you're going to be allowed to use probably a fair bit more current, more electrical power than something like an Arduino would normally be able to handle. So you're going to have a year of learning how to use all this cool stuff and then putting it all together into really cool projects, hopefully. And you're going to do a lot of really neat stuff and learn some cool things. At the very least, you'll be able to absolutely win at Halloween, right? You can attach these lights to your clothing, you can sew them. On the other hand, if you really get into it, if you enjoy the little bit of programming we do and the electronics, maybe you'll think about something like majoring in electrical engineering or physics or computer science or something like that. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you in class, and I'll talk to you later.